My sister laughed while kicking me out. 3 years later, I'm the one signing her eviction notice. My sister was laughing so hard she had to grab the porch rail to steady herself while the locksmith changed the deadbolt, and my mother's blue ceramic serving bowl shattered at my feet. It was 9:17 in the morning. There were 2 black trash bags on the sidewalk, with my winter coat hanging half out of one of them, a deputy standing beside the hydrangeas like he wished he were anywhere else, and 6 faces in the windows of our building, pretending not to watch. Marissa flicked her sunglasses up into her hair, looked me dead in the face, and said, "You've lived off this family long enough." Then she laughed again. Not a nervous laugh, not a shocked laugh, a bright, mean, delighted laugh, like this had been building in her chest for years. What nobody on that sidewalk knew was that she hadn't just thrown me out of my home. She had just locked herself inside a building she didn't know how to run, with bills she didn't understand, tenants who only stayed because I kept the place breathing, and a countdown already ticking under her feet. What Marissa also didn't know was that I still had copies of everything. Every rent ledger, every city notice, every contractor invoice, every certified letter she ignored, and one voicemail she'd left by accident that would sound very different once the right people heard it. And what absolutely none of them knew, my aunt with her hand over her mouth, the deputy shifting his weight, the tenants peeking through cheap blinds, was that 3 years later, on that exact same porch, with that same cracked third step and that same rust line on the gutter, I'd be the one holding the paper with Marissa's name at the top. My name is Nora. I was 39 that morning, wearing paint-splattered gray sweats, 1 gold hoop earring, and the same sweatshirt I'd slept in because I'd been up until 2 a.m. balancing the building accounts after the funeral crowd finally left. Our mother had been dead for 11 days. 11. The lilies from the church were still on the lobby table. Her reading glasses were still on the kitchen windowsill in Unit 1A. Her half-finished crossword was still folded beside the recliner, with the red pen clipped to it. Her cardigan still smelled like white shoulders and peppermint. And my sister had picked the morning after the burial lunch to make a spectacle. She didn't just want me out, she wanted witnesses. So she timed it perfectly. Saturday morning, rent weekend. Mrs. Alvarez from 2B coming back from the laundromat. The college boys in 3C carrying cases of Gatorade up the stairs. Old Mr. Coe from the corner unit walking his little white dog. Our Aunt Denise just stopping by. Even Pastor Reed's wife happened to pull up for a quick casserole drop-off and sat frozen behind the wheel, while Marissa held court on the porch like she was unveiling a remodel. "You don't get to squat here because you're sad," she said, loud enough for everybody to hear. Squat. I had lived in that building for 8 years, in the garden unit first, then 1A with Mom after her hip replacement. I handled the rent collection, the repair calls, the plumber who only answered if you called before 7, the boiler inspections, the late notices, the city paperwork, the insurance renewals, the whole ugly, invisible spine of the place. But Marissa didn't say any of that. She stood there in a cream wool coat that still had the department store basting stitch on the back vent and said, "You're not a manager, you're a dependent." That word landed harder than the locksmith's drill. Dependent. Like I was some woman who slept until noon and ate cereal on our mother's dime. Like the reason the heat worked in January was magic. Like the reason tenants paid on time was charm. Like the reason the water hadn't been shut off 3 separate times in the last 2 years wasn't because I stood in line at municipal billing with printed ledgers and a cashier's check. Marissa bent, picked up my framed photo of me and Mom from one of the open boxes, glanced at it, and dropped it face down into a trash bag. That was the moment my chest went hot. Not when she changed the locks, not when she called me a squatter. When she touched that photo with 2 fingers, like it was junk. She thought the cruelest thing she could do was throw me out while people watched. She had no idea the expensive part of humiliation is never the moment itself. It's what the person remembers. It's what they keep. It's what they do with it later. By then, Marissa had spent years building the cleanest possible version of herself for other people. She was 43, glossy, camera-ready, the kind of woman who said things like, "Curate your peace," and "Boundaries are a form of self-respect," right before doing something vicious. She sold houses in fitted blazer dresses and pointed heels. She knew lighting. She knew angles. She knew how to stand in a kitchen and make a lie feel tasteful. To the outside world, she was the successful older sister who had everything figured out. To the family, she was the daughter who got out. Married young, bought the big colonial in Brook Hollow Estates, posted Christmas photos in matching pajamas, chaired the school gala auction, remembered to send floral arrangements when people died. And me? I was the cautionary tale. The younger sister whose marriage ended at 31. The one who came home. The one who worked odd jobs because nobody understood that property operations isn't glamorous enough to impress people until it collapses, and suddenly everybody wants the woman who knows where the shutoff valve is. Family reduced me to a set of easy words. Quiet, sensitive, never really bounced back. Good with paperwork, I guess. Marissa sharpened it further. Mom let Nora stay because she had a soft heart. That line got repeated so often it became scripture. At Thanksgiving, at baby showers, at the funeral luncheon, apparently. Not one of them said the other half. Mom let me stay because when her knees went bad, I was the one carrying laundry up 2 flights. When the boiler failed on Christmas Eve, I slept in a coat on a folding chair waiting for the emergency repairman. When Unit 3A flooded at 1:14 in the morning, I was ankle-deep in gray water with a shop vac and a flashlight, while Marissa texted, "Can't. We're at Aspen Grove Lodge. Try someone else." Nobody says, "Try someone else," when the problem already has a designated daughter. So that morning, when Marissa looked around at the tenants and relatives and said, "I've been cleaning up this mess for years," people nodded, because the lie fit the outfit. But hidden inside that ugly morning was a truth Marissa had missed so completely it would eventually ruin her. Our building wasn't 6 pretty brick units and a passive stream of rent. It was a living, leaking, regulated machine, and I was the one who knew how it ran. I knew which tenant paid cash because his daughter handled his banking and only came on Wednesdays. I knew the back stair rail on the north side wobbled if anybody over 200 pounds leaned on it. I knew the insurance inspector hated dogs and always scheduled after lunch. I knew the boiler sounded different 12 hours before it failed. I knew the city gave you exactly 14 days to correct a smoke detector citation before the fee doubled. I knew the flat roof over 3C pooled water near the drain after heavy rain, and if you didn't clear the leaves, it backed up under the flashing and crept down the inside wall like a stain with patience. I knew which vendor would extend us 30 days, and which one wouldn't answer unless the balance was clean. I knew the exact amount in the operating account the morning Mom died. $34,612. And I knew something else. 3 weeks before she passed, my mother made me print the last 6 months of bank activity, stack the invoices by month, and put them into a red accordion file she kept in the bottom drawer of the sideboard. She was tired. She was in pain, but her mind was bright and hard. She tapped the folder with one finger and said, "If your sister starts performing after I'm gone, let her." I remember staring at her. Performing? Mom gave me that sideways look only mothers can give when they love both daughters and trust only one with the ugly facts. "She likes the ribbon-cutting part of life," she said. "You understand the basement." I laughed then. I didn't know she was handing me a prophecy. Marissa could pose on the front steps with new flowers and call the building a legacy asset. What she could not do was survive the first month without the passwords, the rent habits, the vendor trust, and the paper trail she thought was clutter. And by Monday morning, the countdown had already started. The first text came 48 hours after she threw me out. "What's the login for the tenant portal?" I looked at it while sitting on the edge of a motel bed with an orange bedspread that felt damp no matter how high I turned the air. My boxes were stacked against the wall. My mother's photo, cracked glass and all, was propped beside the lamp. I had exactly $1,842 in my checking account, a storage unit booked for 3:30, and mascara still dried on the cuff of my sleeve from crying into it in the parking lot after the locksmith drove off. I did not answer. At 8:13 p.m., another one came. Also, where are the August leases? At 8:17 p.m., the trash company says account is past due. Call me. At 8:22 p.m., Nora, stop being childish. I set the phone face down, not because I didn't know the answers, because for the first time in 8 years, the crisis wasn't automatically mine. By Wednesday, she'd called 7 times. By Thursday, 11. By Friday, she left a voicemail. "Nora, enough. I need the boiler service contact, the laundry machine key, and whatever code Mom used for the city portal. If you're trying to punish me, grow up." Punish her. That word almost made me laugh. She still thought inconvenience was punishment. She still had no idea what negligence costs. That same Friday, Mrs. Alvarez texted me a picture of her ceiling. There was a brown water bubble spreading over the plaster in 2B like a bruise. At the bottom of the image, she'd typed, "Your sister says it's old staining. It is dripping on my grandson's crib." I stared at that photo for a long time, not because I felt triumphant, because I felt sick. There is a very specific grief in watching a place you kept alive get handed to someone who thinks stewardship is the same thing as ownership. I texted back only one thing: document everything. That was the first crack. Not a dramatic one, not yet. Just a drip in a ceiling, a missed portal payment, a woman in a motel room learning how powerful silence sounds when the right person finally needs you. Over the next 6 weeks, the building started speaking in numbers. August 14th. Garbage pickup suspended over a $1,126 balance. August 19th. Late water notice, red stamped. August 23rd. 2 smoke detector citations from a surprise city inspection. August 28th. Laundry vendor lockout because the revenue sharing transfer hadn't cleared. September 2nd. Roof patch estimate ignored. September 6th. Tenant from 3A sends me video of mushrooms pushing out of the bathroom baseboard. Actual mushrooms. I started a folder on my laptop called Ashby, then a subfolder inside it called Receipts. Every time a former tenant or vendor reached out because they knew Marissa would ignore them or gaslight them, I saved it. Screenshots of her saying she didn't do maintenance requests over text. A photo of the basement utility sink backed up with black water. 3 emails from the insurance broker asking for updated documentation she never submitted. A picture of a certified envelope from the city sitting unopened on the lobby radiator for 4 days. Then came the voicemail, the real one, not the irritated ones to me. The one she left for her husband, Todd, by accident because she hit my number while trying to forward a contact. I was unloading boxes into storage when my phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the transcript begin to auto-generate, and froze. Her voice came through bright and breathless. "Hey babe, good news! I moved the security deposit money over for now, just to cover the roof guys and the staging invoice for Willow Lane. Don't make that face. I'll put it back before anybody notices. These people are month to month. They don't even know what they signed." I listened to it 3 times, then saved it in 3 places: phone, laptop, cloud. There are moments in life when your pulse doesn't race. It cools. That was one. Because until then, Marissa was just arrogant. With that voicemail, she became sloppy. And sloppy people eventually create witnesses. I still didn't go after her. Not yet. I had $30 in gas money, a motel bill I couldn't keep paying, and a mother I hadn't properly cried for because survival was louder than grief. But Marissa had crossed a line she didn't realize existed. Once you touch tenant deposits, timing starts to matter. And once timing matters, panic follows. The first people to stop believing her weren't family. They were the tenants. People notice fast when the person who used to solve things disappears. The college boys from 3C, who used to call me Ms. Nora, even though I kept telling them I wasn't 80, started leaving trash bags by the side gate because the dumpsters overflowed for 5 straight days. Mr. Coe told the mail carrier, in his careful, quiet English, "Old manager gone. New one smiles, but no fix." Mrs. Alvarez, who had once brought my mother caldo in mason jars after surgery, started a text thread with the other tenants. She sent me screenshots one night at 11:42. "Marissa, We are upgrading the building's standards and ask for grace during transition. Tenant 1. The hallway lights are out. Tenant 2. My oven still doesn't work. Tenant 3. There is mold in my closet. Marissa. We appreciate your patience. Mrs. Alvarez underlined that last one with her finger before taking the screenshot. I could tell because the image was slightly blurred there. We appreciate your patience. People can tolerate a lot before they get angry. Disrespect is usually what does it. By October, 2 units had given notice. By November, 1 tenant filed a formal complaint with the city. By Thanksgiving, the family still repeated Marissa's version, but now it had tiny cracks in it. Aunt Denise pulled me aside in the church fellowship hall and said, "Your sister seems stressed." That was new. Not, "You should make peace." Not, "She's trying her best." Stressed. Which is family language for, maybe she isn't actually handling it. I just looked at her and said, "Boilers don't care about confidence." Aunt Denise blinked. Then she changed the subject. I spent that winter rebuilding my life in ugly, practical pieces. I moved out of the motel and rented a room from a retired court reporter named Evelyn, who smelled like Nivea and jasmine rice and had rules taped to the fridge in blue painter's tape. No shoes in hallway. Label leftovers. If you hear the old pipes knocking, ignore them. She charged me $600 a month and never once asked me for a tragic version of myself. I took a temp job with a small property management company in River West because their operations coordinator quit mid-portfolio, and they needed someone who understood work orders, rent rolls, city deadlines, and angry humans. On my second day, their regional manager, a man named Dev Patel, with rimless glasses and the attention span of a scalpel, watched me sort 83 unresolved tickets by urgency, vendor type, and municipal exposure in under an hour. He leaned on the cubicle wall and said, "Where have you been hiding?" I almost said, "In my mother's basement." Instead, I said, "Keeping a building alive." By March, he'd moved me to full-time. By July, I was handling 18 properties. By the end of the year, I'd cleaned up 3 inherited messes so fast that the owners started asking for me by name. The thing about hidden competence is that it stays invisible until somebody puts it in a room where results can be measured. Then, suddenly, it looks like power. I learned software Marissa had never heard of. I learned lender language. I learned how buyers evaluate deferred maintenance, and how easily vanity collapses under a spreadsheet once the right person starts asking the right questions. And all that time, I kept one eye on Ashby, the building, our building, my mother's building, Marissa's stage. She threw me out, thinking I was the weakest thing connected to that place. 12 months later, I was sitting in acquisition meetings with people who looked at distressed brick buildings the way surgeons look at scans, and Ashby was starting to bleed. The second winter was when the real damage surfaced. The roof wasn't patched in time. Water got into 3C again, then 2B, then the common hallway wall. The insurance carrier sent a reservation of rights letter that might as well have been a flare gun. The city hit the building for exterior stair deterioration, emergency lighting failure, and 2 uncorrected habitability complaints. Then the property tax installment went unpaid. Not late, unpaid. I know because one of the old vendors forwarded me the notice with a single line in the body of the email. Thought you'd want to know. The amount due was $26,418.73. By then, I wasn't the woman in the motel anymore. I was operations lead on a portfolio worth 8 figures. I had business cards, a bonus structure, a calendar booked in 15-minute blocks, a closet with exactly 6 blazers in neutral colors, and 1 good black coat. I also had a therapist named Liana who, after listening to me summarize the latest Ashby disaster, asked, "Do you want her destroyed, or do you want the truth to stand without you carrying it?" That question stayed with me, because revenge sounds simple when you're crying on a sidewalk. It gets more complicated when you can actually do real damage. Marissa texted me on a Tuesday at 6:03 a.m. "Can you just tell me who handled Mom's annual furnace certification?" No hello, no apology, not even fake softness. At 6:19, I know you know. At 6:47, Todd thinks we should talk. That one interested me. Not because of Todd. He'd always been furniture to me. Expensive watch, polished smile. The kind of husband who talked about our family office when he meant a room with matching shelves and unopened mail. But because husbands only think we should talk when numbers start waking them up at night. I did not answer. At 9:11, Marissa called from a number I didn't know. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was tight this time. The county put some kind of redemption deadline on the tax letter, and I need to know if this is standard or if somebody filed something. Call me back. That was the first time I heard fear. Real fear has less volume. A redemption deadline. There it was. Not the end of the story, the countdown. And once a clock enters a revenge story, people stop blinking. I started pulling public records after hours. Not because I needed to, because I needed to see how bad she'd let it get. Tax delinquency, code enforcement, lender notices, lis pendens filing. The first mortgage was still there, small, manageable. The second lien wasn't. Marissa had taken out a commercial line against the building 18 months after Mom died. $210,000. I sat in my apartment, my own apartment by then, clean white walls, real dishes, no mothball smell, no shared hallway drama, and stared at the PDF until the numbers stopped feeling like numbers and started feeling like motives. 210,000. No wonder the security deposits vanished. No wonder the taxes went unpaid. No wonder Todd suddenly wanted to talk. That kind of money doesn't disappear into paint samples and throw pillows. That kind of money gets swallowed by a lifestyle that was already running ahead of reality. A week later, I got proof of that too. Not from a hacker, not from a sneaky cousin, from Marissa herself. She sent me 19 screenshots by accident. I'm still not sure how. Maybe she meant to send them to Todd. Maybe she was spiraling. Maybe the universe just got bored. But suddenly, my phone was lighting up with payment reminders, overdraft alerts, and one frozen account notification from a brokerage I recognized from local listings. Then a single message underneath them. Ignore these. I laughed so hard I scared myself. Ignore these. Like the evidence of a slow-motion collapse was a typo. I saved every screenshot before she could unsend anything. 3 minutes later she called, voice shaking with rage now. Delete those. I thought I was childish, I said. Nora, delete them. Are you moving tenant money around again? Silence. Then she hissed. You don't know what you're talking about. That's the thing guilty people always say, right before the paperwork proves otherwise. The social part didn't happen all at once. It never does. It happened like a stain spreading under wallpaper. One cousin saw a Facebook post from a former tenant about mold and tagged another cousin asking, "Isn't this Marissa's building?" Pastor Reed's wife stopped asking me to make peace and started saying, "I've been praying for wisdom in your family," which is church speak for, I heard enough to stop taking her side. Aunt Denise called one evening and, after too much throat clearing, asked if I knew whether security deposits were supposed to be kept separate. I was chopping cilantro. I stopped. Why are you asking? Long pause. Because Todd was at your sister's house yelling in the driveway, and the words escrow theft travel. There it was. Witnesses. Not glamorous ones, not cinematic. Better, suburban ones. People watering lawns, walking dogs, pretending not to stare while the truth finally got loud enough to hear from the sidewalk. Then came the brokerage review. Marissa's license wasn't revoked dramatically on a billboard or in handcuffs. Life is rarely that theatrical. But one of her listings vanished. Then two. Her headshot disappeared from the office website for administrative update. 3 weeks later, a woman I knew from River West, who had once worked reception at Marissa's brokerage, texted me 3 words. She's on leave. I didn't ask why. I already knew why. Pressure makes people sloppy. Sloppy makes paper. Paper becomes consequence. By the time the family realized Marissa's version of me might have been built on air, I was no longer trying to get my place back. I was learning something much more useful: how to buy places other people had already ruined. In year 3, Dev called me into a conference room with 2 coffees and a county auction packet. He slid it across the table and said, "You know this address." I looked down. Ashby. Same brick exterior in the thumbnail photo. Same 6 units. Same ugly side drain. Same maple tree out front, whose roots kept lifting the walkway 2 inches every spring. My throat tightened so fast it felt like somebody had put a fist around it. The tax default had matured into a sale window. The second lender was circling. Occupancy was down. Deferred maintenance was obvious from the inspection summary. The estimate for stabilization looked brutal enough to scare off vanity buyers, which meant it was exactly the kind of asset our investors liked if the operations plan was good. Dev tapped the page with his pen. You know the building, the tenants, the deferred issues, the neighborhood. I want your recommendation. Recommendation. Not permission, not a favor, not a rescue mission. Professional judgment. I took a slow breath and went page by page. Roof replacement needed within 12 months. Boiler uncertain but salvageable. 3 units under market, 1 vacant, 1 likely uninhabitable without remediation. Stair and lighting citations fixable. Water intrusion worse than public notes reflected, but location solid. Bones good. If acquired at the right number and managed tightly, yes. Dev studied me while I spoke. Then he said, "You want to lead it?" Just like that. Not because he pitied me, because I was the best operator in the room. I said yes before my fear could dress itself up as ethics. We closed through an LLC 47 days later. Purchase price, $412,000. I signed the acquisition packet in a navy blazer with my hair pinned back and my mother's thin gold chain under my collar. No one in my family knew. Not yet. Buying the building wasn't the payoff. That was just the trap door opening. The real payoff started when Marissa realized who had bought it and where she was standing when she found out. The closing handoff happened on a gray Thursday that smelled like wet concrete. I arrived at 8:40 with a field supervisor, a locksmith, 2 maintenance guys, and a folder thick enough to bruise with certified mail receipts, tax sale notices, title docs, and occupancy records. Marissa's SUV was already out front. Of course it was. Still the white luxury one, though dirtier now, 1 rim curb rashed, a crack running through the passenger side fog light. Details matter. They tell you what money stopped fixing first. When she opened the building door and saw me on the front walk, she actually smiled. For half a second. That was how sure she still was that life sorted itself around her. Then she saw the people behind me. The folders, the locksmith, the clipboards, the look on my face. And the smile disappeared so cleanly, it was like watching a lamp go dark. "What are you doing here?" she said. I held up the ownership packet. "Taking possession." She laughed once, but it was not the same laugh from 3 years earlier. This one came out thin and cracked at the edges. "From who?" "From the county, through Northline Residential Holdings." Her eyes moved over my coat, my badge, the men behind me, then back to the paper in my hand. "No." "It closed at 8:15. "No." I'll never forget that second no. Not because it was loud, because it sounded 12 years old. She snatched the top page, scanning for the name, and when she saw my signature on the operating side, her face lost color in strips, like paper soaking. "You?" she whispered. "Me." You bought my building? No, I said. You lost our mother's building. I bought what was left. That line sat between us while rain clicked softly against the porch rail. Behind Marissa, in the lobby, I could see the wilted fake eucalyptus wreath she'd hung on the mirror to make neglect look curated. She looked over my shoulder as if some adultier adult might appear to stop this. Nobody did. I handed her the formal notices. Transfer of ownership, demand for records, occupancy status review, utility reconciliation, and one more. Notice to vacate owner's unit pending holdover review. That got her attention. You can't do that. I can. I live here. You have no lease. This was my property. Was. You vindictive little... Careful, I said quietly. There are cameras. That stopped her. People like Marissa don't hate consequences most. They hate documentation. She tried the family route next, fast, desperate, reaching for old handles. Mom would be disgusted with you. That one landed. Of course it did. Even after everything, certain sentences still find the old soft spots. But grief had taught me something by then. Just because a line hurts doesn't mean it's true. So I opened the folder and showed her the certified mail log. 7 notices signed for, 3 returned unclaimed, 2 posted, 1 taped to the interior vestibule door and photographed. Tax deadlines, code citations, redemption period, final sale notice. Then the vendor ledger showing unpaid invoices. Then the deposit account deficit. Then, because I wanted her pulse to miss a beat, the transcript of her voicemail. I watched her eyes hit the phrase, "Move the security deposit money over." That did it. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. For the first time in her life, Marissa looked unscripted. If the story ended there, it would have been satisfying, but it wouldn't have been enough, because Marissa still had one move left, and like all bad players, she made the move that finished her. She refused to leave. Of course she did. She told everyone the sale was predatory, that I had manipulated the process, that Northline had exploited a grieving family. She cried to Aunt Denise. She called Pastor Reed. She sent a 7-minute voice note to the cousins' group chat, saying she was being displaced by corporate greed, which would have been a stronger argument if the corporation didn't have my exact handwriting on the acquisition signatures. Then she barricaded herself in the owner's unit on the 2nd floor. Not with furniture, with narrative. That was always her preferred material. She posted a filtered photo of the building exterior with the caption, "Fighting for legacy. Thank you for your prayers." What she didn't post were the 5 months of unpaid taxes before the sale, or the lien notices, or the deposit transfers, or the inspection failures, or the fact that she had already stopped paying on her own house in Brook Hollow, and Todd had moved into a short-term rental near his office. She didn't post the silence from her brokerage either. For 47 days, she squatted in that unit while our attorneys processed the holdover. 47 days. Every day cost money. Every day was another scene she could perform. So I stopped feeding the performance. We posted notices, filed paperwork, documented access denial, logged utility use, recorded every hostile interaction. She screamed at one of our maintenance techs for entering the basement with a licensed plumber, called him a thief, told him she knew judges, claimed sentimental trauma while standing on $6,000 of unpaid utility burden and a kitchen island she'd financed with deposit money. The irony would have been funny if it weren't always soaked in other people's damage. Then the building itself turned on her. Because unlike family, buildings keep records. Former tenants came forward when our legal team contacted them for deposit reconciliation. Mrs. Alvarez produced printed text. The college boys had video of the hallway ceiling raining brown water into a trash can. Mr. Ko had kept every handwritten rent receipt I ever gave him in a biscuit tin by his entry table. One by one, things that had only lived in my head entered the world as proof. Aunt Denise stopped calling me sensitive and started calling me professional. Pastor Reed asked if we could meet in his office, not to reconcile, but because 2 members of the church had family in the building and wanted to know if their deposits were recoverable. Even Todd called. That surprised me. Not because I thought he cared about me. He didn't. But desperation makes strange humility. He asked if there was any path for Marissa to remain temporarily if he covered arrears. I told him there were no arrears to cure because she wasn't a lawful tenant. There was only unauthorized occupancy, property-related claims, and pending review. Silence. Then he asked the question that told me everything. Did she really move deposit funds? I looked out my office window at a parking lot full of contractor trucks. Yes. He exhaled through his nose. I thought so. That was the sound of a marriage leaving the room. By then, Marissa had lost the building, the brokerage, the husband, and most of the family's blind confidence. But there was still one symmetry left, the same one she had created for me. The porch, the paper, the witnesses. The court date on the holdover landed on a Wednesday. She tried to arrive looking like the old version of herself. Camel coat, hair smoothed, pearl studs, nude heels. But money leaves traces. The hem of the coat was frayed inside. One nail had no polish. Her tote bag was expensive, but overstuffed in the frantic way of women carrying too much paperwork and not enough control. I wore charcoal wool, low black heels, hair in a knot, no hoop earrings, no visible emotion. Not because I wanted to look intimidating, because I wanted to look final. Her attorney asked for more time, claimed family complexity, emotional hardship, potential procedural confusion surrounding prior occupancy. Our counsel handed up the file. Ownership docs, notice logs, service photos, certified mail, tax sale confirmation, occupancy timeline. Her public posts contradicting her claims. And my favorite piece, the voicemail transcript attached not as spectacle, but as support for broader financial irregularity relevant to credibility. The judge didn't even need all of it. That's the funny thing about trying to hide from paperwork when your whole life is on paper. You imagine some dramatic cross-examination. Usually, it's just a tired judge flipping to the page that matters and losing patience. Motion granted. Writ approved. Vacate date set. I didn't look at Marissa right away. I looked at the wood grain of the counsel table and let my pulse settle. Then I turned. She was staring at me like I had become a species she didn't recognize. Maybe I had. Some transformations aren't glamorous. They're administrative. The writ gave her 6 days. She used 5 to keep pretending. On the 6th, the deputy showed up, and the street remembered. The morning Marissa was removed from the owner's unit was clear and bright, the kind of spring day that makes everything look rude in high definition. 9:11 a.m., same porch, same cracked third step, same iron rail she had laughed against 3 years earlier. A different deputy, but the same tan uniform, the same clipped tone, the same orange paper against old brick. There is no sound quite like the rip of packing tape when dignity is being disassembled in daylight. Marissa had managed to fill the unit with all the props of importance. A cream boucle chair too wide for the room, 3 oversized mirrors, framed prints with gold leaf text, kitchen canisters labeled flour, sugar, love. A ring light collapsed in the corner by the window, boxes of seasonal decor, a designer dog bed, even though Todd had taken the dog months earlier. When the movers started bringing things out, the neighborhood did what neighborhoods do. It noticed. Curtains shifted. A delivery van slowed. Mrs. Alvarez stepped out onto her second-floor landing and folded her arms over her chest. Then Aunt Denise's sedan rolled up. Of course it did. You can't buy timing like family timing. She got out slowly, looked from the boxes to Marissa, to me, and you could see the exact second she understood the shape of the story had fully reversed. Not that I was winning, that Marissa had once stood here and enjoyed doing this to me. And now she was the one shouting, crying, bargaining, trying to gather dignity with both hands while cardboard softened in the sun. She saw me holding the final file and snapped, "You planned this!" No, I built this. There's a difference. "You waited for me to fail!" I met her eyes. No, I waited for the truth to become visible. That made her angrier than any insult could have, because hidden beneath every narcissist's panic is the belief that visibility is optional. It isn't. Not forever. The deputy asked her to step aside. She didn't, so he repeated it. More boxes came out, a shoe rack, a bar cart, 3 garment bags, a framed family photo from a beach trip where she had once cropped me out before posting it online. I almost laughed at that. The universe has taste sometimes. Then came the banker's box. Brown cardboard, white label, my handwriting. Ashby/Originals. She saw it in my arms and went still. That box contained the old leases, the vendor notes, my mother's handwritten repair log, the tax notices, the deposit records, and the cracked photo Marissa had thrown face down into a trash bag 3 years before. I had kept it all, not as a shrine, as evidence, as memory with teeth. She looked at the label, then at me, and in a voice so low only I could hear, she said, "You really never forgave me." I leaned in just enough so she wouldn't miss the answer. "No," I said. "I just got organized." That was the cleanest moment of my life. Not loud, not dramatic, precise. She flinched like I'd slapped her. Former tenants were watching now, 2 current ones too. One of the college boys from years earlier, now apparently employed and wearing a polo shirt with some telecom logo, stood by the gate and murmured, "Damn," under his breath when the boucle chair nearly tipped into a puddle. Marissa noticed the audience then, really noticed, and panic changed texture. It stopped being anger and became exposure. That's the part people remember. Not when the powerful person loses, when they realize everybody can see it. We changed the locks that afternoon, again. This time I stood inside the vestibule while the locksmith worked. Fresh brass, clean turn, no shaking hands. I walked unit to unit with the rehab supervisor afterward, making notes. Patch the hallway plaster, replace stair lighting, inspect subfloor in 3C, deep clean owner's unit, document all abandoned personal property by inventory photo. The building smelled like dust, cardboard, and rain coming in through cracked screens. For the first time in 3 years, it also smelled like possibility. Mrs. Alvarez came down around 2, carrying a foil tray of still warm empanadas, and said, "For the workers." Then, after a pause, she touched my elbow and added, "For your mother, too." That almost undid me. Not the court papers, not the sale, not even the porch. That small tenderness, in a building full of damage, from someone who had watched both versions of the story. I thanked her and had to look away for a second. By summer, 3 units were stabilized. By fall, the roof was new. The stair rail no longer wobbled. The common lights came on with one clean click. The laundry revenue account balanced. Deposits were reconstructed and repaid where they could be verified. The lobby mirror lost the fake eucalyptus wreath. We painted the walls a quiet, warm white that made the building look less tired, without pretending it had never suffered. I didn't move back in. That surprises people when they hear the story. They think revenge means reclaiming the exact room you lost. Sometimes, power is not needing to. I kept my own apartment across town. I kept my job title. I kept my therapy appointments. I kept the life I built in the space Marissa had meant to turn into my ending. As for her, the fallout stayed exactly as long as it needed to, and no longer. Todd filed. The house in Brook Hollow sold. The cousins got quieter around me. Pastor Reed became very interested in sermons about stewardship. Aunt Denise sent me a text one Sunday that simply said, "Your mother would be proud of how you handled business." Handled business, not healed, not reconciled, not risen above. Handled business. I considered that progress. But there was one last thing I did before I let the story close. Not for revenge, for accuracy. On the first anniversary of the acquisition, I unlocked the sideboard drawer in the restored office alcove downstairs, and took out my mother's red accordion file. Inside, exactly where I'd left it, was the note she'd tucked between the bank statements. Her handwriting was blunt and slanted. Nora, if this place ever gets ugly, don't save faces. Save the building. I sat there for a long minute with the paper in my hand and the late afternoon sun hitting the floorboards. Then I laughed. Not like Marissa had laughed, not delighted by somebody else's humiliation. More like relief, finally finding an exit. Because that was it. That had always been it. She wanted the performance. I kept the structure. She wanted witnesses to my downfall. I became the witness to hers. She thought kicking me out made me powerless. All it really did was remove me from the blast radius long enough to build better leverage. People still ask sometimes if I planned it from the beginning. If I knew, standing there in gray sweats, with my life in trash bags, that I'd someday own the building and sign the order that removed her from it. No. At the beginning, I was just trying not to drown. That matters. Because the most satisfying reversals aren't born from genius schemes. They're born from one person underestimating how much the other can survive. Marissa thought survival looked pathetic. Cheap motel, storage unit, temp job, second-hand desk, bus rides in winter, microwave dinners, legal pads full of numbers. She didn't know survival can harden into skill, skill into reputation, reputation into access, access into authority, and authority, when it finally arrives, doesn't need to scream. It signs. The last box of her things sat in our storage cage for exactly 30 days before state abandonment rules cleared it. I signed that release too. Inside were throw pillows, 3 empty candle jars, old listing folders, half a set of wine glasses, and a framed print that said, "She believed she could, so she did." I threw that one away myself, not out of cruelty, out of editorial discipline. 3 years ago, my sister laughed while I stood on that porch with my life in trash bags. This time, I locked the door before she could come back in.